channel. We are in chapter 46 from a guidance, that is coronary circulation. So you know what is actually coronary circulation is nothing but the blood which is supplied to our heart itself. So let us see about this. So first we have the glossary terms, important terms like angina pectoris. So first we need to know what is this. So it is mainly the symptom of myocardial ischemia. So you know what is ischemia? So now in ischemia, it's nothing but low blood supply to a particular muscle. Here you can see myocardial muscle. So here in heart, there is low blood supply. So because of this, the symptom may get like angina pectoris. So what is it? There's a chest pain brought on by exertion and often referred to as inner part of left arm. So always if you get any chest pain whenever there is myocardial ischemia, along with myocardial ischemia, if you get any chest pain, that too often referring to the inner side of our left arm, even it radiates to the left arm. Why? Because you know the pain fibers, and during embryological development, when we are born, you know, our heart actually started forming from our neck side. So because of this, what happens, the pain fibers are also formed there. So because of this, if you get any heart chest side pain, then you may also get the pain in a left side of face, left side of neck, or whole neck, and also in the left side of arm, because all these pain fibers are same. So this is angina pectoris, mainly seen as a symptom of myocardial ischemia. And next, coming to auto-regulation of blood flow. Auto-regulation, in the name itself, you can see auto means self-regulation by uh, the local factors which lead to normal blood flow. So the ability to maintain the constant blood flow despite the changes in the blood pressure within the specified pressure range, means within the normal limit range. So apart from coronary circulation, also it is seen of course in renal, cerebral circulation. In every circulation you can see this auto regulation. So this is like ability to maintain a constant pressure inside a blood vessels. So now let us see what is collateral coronary circulation. Here you can see the term coronary means the blood supplying to the heart. So what is this collateral coronary? So the circulation of blood mainly by secondary channels when the primary artery is occluded. You know, whenever sometimes about like every aged people, like about in the age of 60, their arteries may be especially the coronary arteries may get occluded, but they are unaware of it, because you know this collateral start forming. This collateral are the small vessels which go and form, and they directly supply the blood to it. So because they are unaware, so that they don't know that they have any occlusion in their artery. But sometimes if the infarction or ischemic condition is very serious, then these collaterals can also can't compensate this blood flow. And next, let us see what is myocardial infarction. So myocardial, you know, the myocardial muscle getting infarcted means what? Let us see. So reduction in blood flow to the part of myocardium, resulting in a cell death, necrosis. So infarction is nothing but formation of necrosis. You know what happens in necrosis? There is no blood supply, so whole tissue gets infarcted and necrosed. And next, myocardial ischemia. Ischemia is where there is low blood flow. You know, whenever there is low blood flow, you know, blood only carries oxygen, so this also in turn leads to decrease of oxygen even in a myocardial tissue. So a condition of insufficient blood flow to the myocardium, mainly resulting in angina pectoris. So even in this, as we already discussed, this symptom of myocardial ischemia is only angina pectoris. Because of low blood flow, because of insufficient blood flow, the heart muscle get necrosed. So because of this necrosis, you can feel the pain of the angina pectoris. Actually, why this pain comes is because of lactic acid getting accumulated there. That all theory we will see here now. So let us start our main part. So about one third of death in industrialized countries mainly is mainly due to this coronary artery disease. Many people are dying, so we need to know how, what is the mechanism behind it. As a doctor, we need to protect those people who are dying with this coronary artery disease. So only the inner 1/10 millimeters of endocardial surface can obtain the nutrients directly from inside blood vessels. So this is a minute circulation, also called as, you can see here, minuscule means what they're saying, heart can get its blood from the endocardial surface only minute, from the inner side only it can get minute. Mainly it comes, the heart blood supply comes from the coronary arteries. So you can see, actually here we will see from the diagram, we can easily understand. So the coronary arteries are mainly divided into left coronary, this is left coronary artery and the right coronary artery. So this left coronary artery is in turn divided into branches like anterior and left portion of left ventricle. Yeah, it supplies, means left coronary artery mainly supplies the anterior portion of the heart and also to the left portion of the left ventricle, because it's a left coronary artery. So this also mainly the, supplies the blood to the left ventricle. And next, coming to right coronary artery, it supplies most of the right ventricle. So you can see here these branches. We'll discuss about these branches also. So this mainly supplies to the right ventricle, and also it goes posterior part of left ventricle in 80 to 90% of the people. So you can see it is like this and going by this coronary circles backward. So as it is going backward, it may also supply to the left side posterior part of ventricle. So most of the venous return from the left ventricle returns the right atrium. You know, this coronary circulation, venous return goes mainly into the right atrium by coronary sinus, which is 75% of total coronary blood flow. So like almost of this venous blood goes into the coronary sinus, and in turn from coronary sinus it comes into our right atrium. So you know, again from the right atrium it comes into right ventricle and again into pulmonary artery, and it is sent to the lungs, so that lungs, you know, they remove the carbon dioxide and they make them oxygenated. So you know, the whole process again it continues. So most of the venous blood from the right ventricle returns by small anterior cardiac veins that flow directly into the right atrium, not by coronary sinus. So remember, blood from left ventricle um, returns the right atrium only from left ventricle. From left side, it returns the right atrium by coronary sinus, but most of the venous blood from the right ventricle is returning by small anterior cardiac veins that flow directly into right atrium. Here there is no coronary sinus in between, but in the case of left ventricle, coronary sinus is involved. So you need to remember the difference. In left ventricle, coronary, by means of coronary sinus, our venous blood is entering into right atrium. But in the case of our right ventricle, without any coronary sinus, it directly enters into coronary sinus with the means of anterior cardiac veins. So small amount of coronary venous blood flow back into the heart by minute Thebesian veins, which empty directly into the cell chambers of heart. So small, sometimes you know, venous blood all cannot get drained, so some remaining one it is get out by mainly Thebesian veins. These are also minute and small veins which get out the blood. So coronary blood flow is like about 5% of cardiac output. So you know, cardiac output, heart is so great that it produces lot of cardiac output for whole body tissues, but it itself just take only 5% of the cardiac output. So normal coronary blood flow is like 70 milliliters per minute whenever the person is in rest, that to per 100 grams of muscle, or it may also be like 225 milliliter per minute for 4 to 5% of total cardiac output. So this is a normal value. We need to remember, this is very important. And next, if in exercise, young adult, especially in young adult, when he is in exercise, the cardiac output increases sevenfold. So whenever the cardiac output increases, even you know, the coronary blood flow increases fourfold to supply the extra nutrients, extra oxygen which is required. So which is required by a heart. So if the some you know, by some any other mechanism, whenever the coronary blood flow decreases, especially in systole, so remember that especially in systole, the coronary blood flow decreases. Why? Let us see reason. The reason is strong compression of intramuscular blood vessel by left ventricle during systolic contraction. So actually we have intramuscular blood vessels, coronary blood vessels, which are mainly compressed because of the systole, that too mainly because of left ventricle contraction in systole. You know, whenever systole takes place, lot of ejection from left ventricle takes place, that is left ventricle is undergoing high contraction. So because of this contraction, these vessels are getting compressed, so because of this coronary blood flow is decreased. But whereas in diastole, the blood flow increases, because in diastole, you know, the ventricle muscle is relaxed, so because of relaxation, you know, compression is decreased to the intramuscular arteries, so the blood flow increases, that especially the coronary blood flow increases. So coronary blood flow undergo the phasic changes during the cardiac cycle. So inverse phasic changes and are partial in contrast to the left ventricular muscle. So like inverse muscle changes are only partial in left ventricle, whereas in right ventricle they're high, because mm, yeah, inverse phasic, that's it. And next, let us see the outer surface. Yeah, first we need to discuss the diagram. So here you can see the diagram about coronary blood flow. As we discussed, in systole it is very low because intramuscular vessels are getting compressed. So whereas you can see in the diastole, the blood flow to heart is increased, that is coronary blood flow is increased, because in diastole the ventricle is relaxed, so that it cannot compress the intramuscular artery, so it leads to increase in blood flow, coronary blood flow. Now let us discuss about this. You can see outer surface we have the epicardial coronary arteries, and the middle we have intramuscular arteries, and here you can see the subendocardial arterial plexus. So now let us discuss about them. So the outer surface epicardial coronary arteries are smaller intramuscular arteries which are mainly derived from the uh, epicardial coronary arteries. So you can see here, right, this epicardial coronary arteries only in turn give rise to our intramuscular coronary arteries. So, and they penetrate the muscle and supply the nutrients to our myocardium. So beneath the endocardium, we also have our subendothelium arteries. We have seen them. So during systole, the blood flow it gives the blood flow to the left ventricle mainly. So, but the intramuscular are compressed, during systole. So extra vessels of subendocardium arteries compensate them. So once again, let us clearly understand them. This epicardial coronary arteries only in turn give rise to our intramuscular arteries, and those intramuscular artery mainly supply the inside surface of a myocardium with nutrients and also blood. And we also have this subendocardium arterial plexus. These are mainly used as a compensatory mechanism, because in systole what happens, the blood flow, coronary blood flow to the heart decreases. But if the coronary blood flow to the heart decreases even in systole, it's hard for the heart to have to, because the nutrients and blood supply may decrease. So this subendocardial arterial plexus, what they do, they compensate the blood flow mainly in a systole, because intramuscular arteries are compressed in systole. So they act as a compensatory mechanism and help to increase the cardiac coronary blood flow. So now let us see the control of coronary blood flow. So how the coronary blood flow is regulated, let us see. So first one is local muscle metabolism is a primary controller. So local muscles are the primary controllers, mainly by arteriolodilation. Whenever the vessels get dilated, there is increase in diameter or width of the vessel, so that increase in blood flow, so that leads to increase in contraction and increase in coronary blood flow. So it is similar to the muscle in the case of our regulation. So whenever oxygen demand, whenever there is high blood flow, of course it need high oxygen. So they are directly proportional. So whenever there is decrease in oxygen concentration, then ATP is converted into AMP. So this is one of the important mechanism. Whenever the oxygen concentration is decreased, ATP is converted into AMP, and AMP is break down into adenosine, and this adenosine is a powerful vasodilator, which in turn leads to increase in blood flow or coronary blood flow. So this also in turn increases the oxygen concentration. So you can see always oxygen is directly related to a blood flow. So whenever the blood flow is increased, oxygen demand is also increased. But whenever the oxygen concentration is decreased, this process takes place and compensate by increasing the oxygen concentration. How we know? Once again, let us see it. ATP into AMP, AMP into adenosine, adenosine lead to vasodilation, which in turn leads to increase in blood flow and also of course increase in oxygen concentration, because blood flow and oxygen concentration are directly proportional. So other vasodilators are like adenosine phosphate compounds and potassium ions, hydrogen ions, carbon dioxide, prostaglandins E2, nitric oxide. So all these are also vasodilators. We have already seen them in detail in our last video. And also we have pharmacological agents can't block the vaso. So remember that in this case the pharmacological agents can't block the vasodilator effect of adenosine, which is caused mainly by increase in heart muscle activity. So whenever the metabolism of heart is increased, or whenever the contraction of heart muscle is increased, then adenosine is directly released and leading to vasodilation. So even if you give some drugs, they may not alter this function, because it's a natural process which should take place for sure. And next let us see the nervous control of a heart. Before seeing the nervous control of heart, we'll see the arterial branches of this right coronary and left coronary artery. So especially you can see the left coronary artery is divided into a left circumference branch, which passes to this coronary sinus posterior side, and you can have this left anterior descending branch, which is in short also called as LAD. So LAD is a left anterior ascending branch, and here we have left circumflex band. And coming to right coronary artery, it actually divides into, this is called as marginal artery, and also it forms one of the posterior branch of coronary artery. Now let us check out the nervous control. Of course, here also we have again our autonomic nervous system involved. Autonomic nervous system, parasympathetic is our vagus and our sympathetic nervous system. So vagus, mainly it releases the acetylcholine. So whenever the acetylcholine is released, it leads to decrease in heart rate, and also it mainly constrict the blood vessels. So whenever the blood vessels are constricted, there is increase in total peripheral resistance, and this in turn leads to increase in blood pressure. But because of constriction, you can see the lumen is narrow, so the blood flow decreases. Whereas coming to sympathetic nervous system, especially it releases norepinephrine and epinephrine directly and also indirectly from stimulating our adrenal medulla. So because of this release of norepinephrine, this leads to again in turn increase in heart rate and also contractility, and also this increases the metabolism and of course increase the coronary blood flow. So let us see the direct effects. Mainly the vehicle supply to the ventricle coronary system is not so high, but acetylcholine released by parasympathetic nervous system directly dilate the coronary arteries. So remember that acetylcholine from PNS dilate the coronary arteries. And constricted receptors, we have two types of receptors normally for our sympathetic nervous system. We have both constricted receptors and dilated receptors. According to the receptor, the effect will be, so if we have constricted receptors like alpha receptors, then it may lead to vasoconstriction, whereas if we have dilated receptors like beta receptors, then it may lead to dilation of blood vessels. So this both are present in coronary vessels. So coronary vessels can either dilate or also constrict according to the stimulus. So next we have epicardial surface. Epicardial surface is the outer surface of the heart. It mainly have the higher amount of alpha receptors. Then you can estimate that epicardial surface may have higher chance of undergoing constriction. And intramuscular part, as we already discussed, intramuscular coronary arteries, right? So this intramuscular coronary arteries have more amount of beta receptors. Then here also you can guess that if more beta receptors means they have a higher chance to undergo dilation. So if severe, the vasospastic, in the case of epicardial arteries, then what happens if the this alpha receptors stimulation is very high because of sympathetic nervous system, then it may lead to acute vasoconstriction. If severe, then may lead to vasospastic myocardial ischemia and increase in sympathetic activity because of increase in sympathetic activity. This of course always remember, whenever you heard the term myocardial ischemia, this symptom is mainly the angina pectoris or anginal pain, which we already discussed from the beginning. So when the nervous system is decreased, the metabolic control overrides. So whenever the nervous system control is decreased, then of course the metabolic control comes and overrides or increases direct the nervous effect within seconds. And next you can see the cardiac muscle consume fatty acids mainly for its energy instead of carbohydrates for energy. So about 70% it takes from the fatty acids. 70% of fatty acids are needed for the energy. And in cardiac muscle, especially in ischemia or like anaerobic conditions, it may also undergo anaerobic glycolysis for the energy. So glycolysis mainly consume high amount of blood glucose and form large amounts of lactic acid in cardiac tissue. So this lactic acid is only which is the reason for the cardiac pain in ischemic conditions. So now you can understand the process here. In normal conditions, for the energy sake, it takes fatty acids, but mainly in anaerobic conditions, means whenever the oxygen is low. When oxygen will be low, you can easily understand whenever there is ischemia. Ischemia means low blood flow. Low blood flow means low oxygen to cardiac tissue. So low oxygen means of course it will undergo the anaerobic glycolysis. So whenever it undergoes anaerobic glycolysis, glycolysis required more glucose. So it takes more glucose and also forms large amount of lactic acid. So because of this lactic acid, this is the main reason for the anginal pain in a ischemic condition. So that is why whenever you see myocardial ischemia, you can say the symptom is anginal pectoris. So ATP is used to cardiac contraction and other cellular functions normally. So in severe coronary ischemia, what happens? Again, the same process, ATP is converted into ADP. ADP is converted to AMP, adenosine diphosphate, adenosine monophosphate, and in turn into adenosine. So adenosine is formed finally. So because cardiac muscle cells membrane is slightly permeable to adenosine. Remember that cardiac cell membrane is permeable to adenosine. So much of this agent can diffuse from the muscle cell to circulatory blood. So adenosine, it's a mainly vasodilator of coronary arterioles during coronary hypoxia. So this is like a hypoxic condition because here anaerobic glycolysis is going on, so low oxygen means now because of coronary hypoxia, adenosine mainly lead to vasodilation. What happens by vasodilation? Blood width increases, so more blood flow, so that now the oxygen may reach our heart. So 30 minutes of myocardial infarction may lead to like half of adenosine is lost from the affected cell. Even in infarction, there is a chance of loss of adenosine from the blood, lost from affected cell. So and it is replaced by new synthesis of adenosine at the rate of only 2% per hour. So even though if we try to replace it, only 2% may form for hour. So this is the major cause for cardiac cellular death during the myocardial ischemia. So mainly in ischemia, why we see necrosis is this is the main reason, because in infarction we may lose our adenosine. So adenosine is the main one which is needed to vasodilation and all the process to recover. But here you can see only 2% is forming for hour. So this is the main reason why we see the ischemia. I think the person may recover after a long time, because adenosine may again form, recover, and it may again dilate the vessels, and again it may come to normal. But it is very rare in the case of severe ischemia, right? So now let us see ischemic heart disease. So atherosclerosis mainly causes ischemic heart disease. So what is atherosclerosis? The cholesterol plaques are forming in the vessel. For example, this is a vessel, so it may block. It may partially block or sometimes completely block the coronary artery. So you can understand, when the coronary artery is blocked, then there is decreased blood flow or completely no blood flow to the heart. So when there is no blood flow, of course, heart will die, right? So this is the main reason for this. So decrease in coronary blood flow. So in ischemic people with genetic, so they may also have some genetic nature to form the atherosclerosis in some patients, or sometimes in some patients there may be so overweight, like obesity, or sedentary lifestyle, like always like there is no movement in this kind of lifestyle. Also this they may lead to this coronary blood flow obstruction ischemia, and also increase in blood pressure. So whenever there is high blood pressure, all those conditions. So cholesterol accumulate beneath the endothelium at many points in arteries, and later it is invaded by fibrous tissue. So this is the main problem. If cholesterol only comes by macrophages or any other thing, we can just engulf them. But later what happens? Cholesterol along with fibrous tissue, it becomes very hard, and it completely occludes the vessel and frequently become calcified also. So this is a very important danger problem, because if it becomes calcified, there is no way now for the blood to travel, and the net result is plaque formation. So it may block or partially block the blood flow. That is, it may completely block or partially block. So the major site of first few centimeter of major coronary artery. So first few centimeter of major coronary artery may always have this block problem. And next, let us see what is acute coronary occlusion. So it mainly occurs who already have the atherosclerosis heart, but never occur in a normal coronary circulation. So always remember, acute coronary occlusion always take place in a person who already have the atherosclerosis or some other heart diseases. So what is the life-saving value of collateral circulation? Let us see. This is open within minutes after the occlusion. So this is life-saving, because whenever it is occluded, if some parts of the coronary circulation are occluded, then it may open just within minutes, so that it can save the person. So when sudden occlusion occurs in large coronary artery, small anastomosis begin dilation within second, and even diameter enlarge more for next 8 to 24 hours. So this increase the blood flow in two-thirds of the day and reach the normal flow within 1 month. So when occlusion is small, they recover by themselves. But if the occlusion is large, then of course we need to do any surgery, or we try to put the patient on treatment for some long period of time. So now let us see myocardial infarction. So it is nothing but heart attack, right? MI is also called